When a university graduate turned Crip gang member would go on trial for a double murder and ultimately beat the case, many thought he would turn away from outside influences and get back on the right path in life. After all, he pleaded a case of self-defense. Many understood his motive. But ladies and gentlemen, as you've probably seen by the title of this video, it doesn't seem like the person of interest lived up to expectations. Raising the question then of was he actually telling the truth in the first place? Well, I'll leave that question to you, and you'll have to make your own mind up. You'll either believe that he was indeed telling the truth and ended up getting himself into another self-defense situation, or maybe you'll think the complete opposite. After beating a double murder case, he allegedly went on to kill again. So maybe, just maybe then, he was lying after all. Billy Bennett Adams III had his whole life ahead of him, graduating from the University of South Florida with a bachelor's degree in science and business management. He had aspirations of joining the military to follow in his stepfather's footsteps. He himself a disabled veteran who Billy took care of. It's unclear why he didn't join the military prior to the incident he found himself wrapped up in, but family members did insist he was in the process of doing so. Over the course of his university tenure, Billy had been working at the Finish Line store, a sports shop in Tampa, Florida. But for as many positives as there were in his life, there were also negatives. You see, Billy had been connected to the local Crips gang, as you're aware, but how deep those connections are isn't known. Only some initial reports state that he had been involved to some degree with them. Maybe then he had just been loosely associated, or maybe he had used his legit lifestyle to mask his true character. In 2018, Billy started rapping under the alias Ace NH. It's clear to see his affiliation with the gang in the videos. It wouldn't be too hard to think then that his involvement was much deeper than what was out there in the news. And that's pretty much at the heart of this story. His music career. Fast forwarding the timeline 2 years on, a collab project featuring artists from across the city was underway. Billy wanted a piece of it. The album was being fronted by Jimeile, aka Juror, Billy's childhood friend. He didn't want to miss out on the chance to push his name further. After spending a little while cooking up some lyrics, the pair were ready to go and record the song on November 19th. 2020. However, they would run into some issues that in retrospect may have caused a deadly incident if we're to believe one testimony. The boys had a slot booked at a studio for around 6 PM, but a short while before they were due to go in, the session was cancelled due to a clash of bookings. They then attempted to reach out to a handful of other studios that Billy had connections with, but everyone was fully booked due to it being so last minute. Enters Joseph Meeks. Joseph worked in car audio fitting and repairs, but had turned his hobby of being a music engineer into a side hustle around 2008. During his time as an engineer, he built up relationships within the city and had crossed paths with Billy on several occasions, but the pair only really knew each other on a business level, rather than personal. When Billy hit Joseph up on that November's evening to see if he had a slot open, he did, but by this point he had changed his studio location to a shed at the back of his parents' home on the 15,000 block of North 23rd Street in Lutz, Florida. So this is where we get two conflicting stories. On the one hand, Billy stated that he turned up to Joseph's recording studio by himself, and as he arrived, two men, Trayvon Albury and Daniel Thompson, had turned up. Whereas Joseph stated that all three men came together in a car. Billy had been acquainted with Daniel as he had been from the local area, but hadn't known Trayvon. He tagged along. When all were present in the studio, Billy would record his part to the collab song with Jimeile, and after several takes were recorded, he was finished. Jimeile then arrived with his girlfriend who had waited in his car while he went in to record. He was said to have been in the booth for around 20 minutes or so, but had to leave as he and his girlfriend had some errands to run. While Jimeile was laying down his verse, Billy allegedly overheard a conversation between Daniel and Trayvon stating that they wanted to rob Joseph. To back this claim, an Instagram DM was sent to him, but Joseph didn't have his phone on him, so he hadn't received the message. Roughly an hour later, Joseph had worked his magic, and the song was complete, ready to be emailed over. As part of Joseph's engineering process, he emails the song over to the artist before they leave, and said artist has to confirm that they've received it. On this occasion, as he was doing so, Trayvon pulled a firearm and put it to the back of his head. He was none the wiser. That's if we're to believe Billy's story anyway. You see, he claimed that after Trayvon had pointed the gun towards Joseph, he had to do something to prevent it, so he pulled out his own firearm and shot both men. After the initial shots were fired, Joseph, panicked, confused, and traumatized, had turned around to see what had just happened. There they were, Daniel and Trayvon, laying in a pool of their own blood. He looked towards Billy. "They were going to rob you." "What happened?" "They were going to rob you." Joseph then ran in his home to call for emergency services, and Billy fled the scene.
"Hello, my name is Joseph Meeks."
"No, what is the address of the emergency? Where do we need to come to? Is this a house or an apartment?"
"This is a house, and it's a trailer, and I have a shed in the background, and then in the back of the trailer."
"Okay, what's going on?"
Two people have been shot. I was in the shed with 3 people. We were listening to Meeks, and then the one guy pulled out a gun and shot 2 people and said that they were trying to rob me or him, or I don't know what the fuck happened. But 2 people were shot in my shed. I have no clue.
How long ago did this happen?
This just happened 2 minutes ago, less than 2 minutes ago.
What did the guy look like that had the weapon?
He was about a little bit shorter than me. I'm 5'9". He's probably about 5'3". He had
It'd be white, black, Hispanic.
He had like a
Is the man white, black, Hispanic?
He's black, man. He's Black American.
Okay. You said he had dreads, long dreads or short dreads?
He had short dreads.
What color shirt? What color shirt is he wearing?
He had a dark color shirt. It's hard for me to remember exactly.
Okay, Mr. Meeks, is that M-E-E-K-S?
Yes, ma'am.
And Joseph, J-O-S-E-P-H?
Yes.
What's your phone number, hon?
Yes. I know him from Instagram. Okay, you okay? Yes, Dad, I'm fine. I can't believe this is really happening. Are you sure that's that? No, I have no clue, Dad. No, I put it away. I'm on the phone. They don't seem responsive.
We're on the way.
Ma'am, I put my weapon away in the car, okay? So.
Where is what car?
My car is outside. It's a Mercedes-Benz.
What did this guy come in?
We've been here.
What did Ace come in? What kind of car did Ace come in?
He came in like a 4-door dark car, got a dark blue or like an all black car. He just left.
Which way did he go?
He left towards 23rd Street.
Who did he hurt?
No. Dad, I'm sure I'm getting shot. No. Ma'am.
The people in the shed, are they breathing?
Ma'am, I'm not sure. I'm scared because the guy said that they were trying to rob and one of them looked like they're reaching for a gun, to be honest with you. Like, and I just got out, like, I thought the guy with the gun was going to shoot me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, the guy in the shed.
We're in there having a session. I can show you everything time recorded. Like, everything.
You have it on tape?
No, I don't have it on tape. But I have, like, the session that we were just doing. There's proof of what we were just doing. We were in a session, and out of nowhere, the guys were trying to get me to stay. These 2 guys were trying to get me to stay and record. And the one guy that I was recording, he pulled out a gun out of nowhere and shot them and said that.
After an investigation was opened by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office into the shooting, it wasn't too long before Billy was arrested and charged on 2 counts of first-degree murder and burglary. Initial reports stated that the charges came as the result of a witness coming forward declaring that both Daniel and Trayvon had become embroiled in a dispute with some local crips over firearms and money, but it didn't go into specifics. So then, it may have looked as if the shooting came as the result of a gangland hit. Surprisingly though, this wasn't even used by the state when the case would eventually go to trial, meaning either the witness was lying, had withdrew their statement, or the witness's account wouldn't be a strong enough case for the prosecution to argue. Believe it or not, the state couldn't even give a motive as to why Billy did what he did. The only case they really put forward was that the evidence showed that Trayvon was shot in the back of the head, execution style. So how could this be a case of self-defense? One other key detail to help the prosecution's case was that even though Jimeile had to leave quickly because he had errands to run, Billy had prompted him to not even stick around. Text messages exchanged between the pair showed that Billy told Jimeile to, quote, pull off fast after he recorded because, quote, he had some business to was found not guilty on the charges that were brought against him on January 27th, 2023, and after spending months on house arrest leading up to his eventual trial, he was finally a free man. He could put this case to bed and move on with his life. But only 3 days, yes 3 days after beating the case, he would find himself wrapped up in another double homicide investigation. At around 10:16 PM on January 30th, 2023, the Tampa Police Department received a call that there was an unresponsive female in her car at 10789 Pictorial Park Drive. The witness who called 911 had drove by the female's vehicle and noticed that she'd been lying on the ground with the door open. As they approached, it was clear to see that the female was unresponsive. When officers arrived, they found 22-year-old Alana Sims. She'd been shot dead, and a 2-year-old son was found alive in the back of the vehicle. She was 5 months pregnant at the time of her death. A murder investigation was soon opened into the incident, and detectives attempting to trace Alana's final steps tracked down family members who told them on that day a party was supposed to be thrown for her boyfriend. Her boyfriend? None other than Billy Adams. Detectives caught up with Billy while at home on Oakflower Avenue in Tampa, Florida. He was quick to deny knowing that Alana was even deceased. He said that he hadn't spoke with or texted her in several months after believing she had been unfaithful and that the child she was carrying wasn't his. Recounting his moments on the day in question, he said that he was in all day. However, surveillance camera footage painted a different picture. When detectives inquired about the relevant surveillance footage from key areas, it showed that a Chevy Malibu had indeed left the area in where Billy lived. Although the car belonged to Billy's stepfather, detectives wanted to examine it, and it was there 2 bullets were found, similar to those that were used in the murder of Alana. When Billy was confronted with the new evidence, he recanted his earlier statements about being home all evening and said that he had been out with friends at a property in Tampa, further stating that he had left at around 6:50 PM and arrived back at around 8:30 PM. To back these claims, he showed police a video that looked as if it was taken at the location of where he was supposedly out with friends. However, the video had been altered, and it had in fact been taken the day after the shooting. With a mountain of evidence pointing towards Billy Adams as being the #1 suspect, a warrant was executed by police to seize his mobile device, and it was information on the device that secured a charge against him. On the day prior to the shooting, Billy had texted a person who's currently unnamed. The messages clearly indicated that he didn't want to have Alana in his life. The person told Billy not to resolve the issue violently, but they never received a response. A day later, Alana was dead. Billy would go on to be arrested on 2 counts of first-degree murder. When he was taken in for questioning, his story changed once again. This time he said that he indeed met up with Alana, but after things got heated, she pulled a gun on him. In turn, he tried to wrestle the gun from her, and she was shot in the process. But ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't even his final statement. Believe it or not, he changed it again within the same interview, because when detectives asked him to show them how it happened, he couldn't. So his final statement on the matter was that he met Alana, things got heated, she pulled a gun, he managed to somehow get hold of the gun, and he shot her dead in self-defense. When asked where the gun was, he stated that he threw it on his way home after the shooting.
I want to make clear that no one on the jury actually believed Billy Adams' testimony, but we didn't have to believe his testimony. What we needed to find was proof of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And we could not find that, I feel strongly, because the prosecution left gaping holes in their case, and they did not equip us with what we needed to reach a verdict of premeditated first-degree murder. Prosecution, while it's not required to provide a motive, didn't provide a motive, so we had to say, either this young man, for no apparent reason, got up and executed in cold blood these two men, who he may have come there with or may not have come there with, or his story. It's a terrible thing to do. I even said to one of the other jurors, the other juror stated that he'll be back here. And I said, yes, but then there'll be another body. It came as quite a shock, even though I expected at some point he might reoffend. I didn't think it would be just a few days after we acquitted him.